Okay. All right, I'm going to call tonight's, excuse me, meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Councilmember McCardle,
Here.
Councilmember Murray,
Present.
Councilmember Ryan,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wall,
Here.
Councilmember Woodard,
Here.
Mayor Matsumoto Wright,
Here.
and Councilmember Sonmore asked to be excused.
Move to excuse Councilmember Sonmore.
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? She is excused. Next is the discussion for the membership of the Snohomish County Public Safety Coalition. Stefan, is that yours?
Good evening, council members. For the record, Stephen Clifton, Assistant City Manager. In your packet, also online, I have included a proposal to provide a coalition management and public affairs services to mayors and business leaders for public safety. You might recall that this was raised a couple months ago, and a member of the city council asked, what is the money going to actually be used for? So I contacted Mayor Nearing in Marysville, and I also contacted Nick Harper up in the city of Everett. Mayor Nearing noted that you can join the coalition at any time. Nick clarified that it's a $3,750 membership, but the question that was asked is, how is the money going to be spent? So I called Nick, and he provided the document that you have before you. I did send that to you on October 31st, and I did highlight the pages and call your attention to specific pages where it outlined a snapshot and how the money is going to be spent, et cetera. So at this point, I would just probably leave it to the city council to discuss it if you wish, or just decide to support it. Or
Are there any questions or comments on this? Councilmember Ryan?
I've been reading about this also in the Everett Herald, and I think there are now 15 cities hooked into this. And I think it's important that we as a city join the coalition in that we support safety in the community and need to work together as a team in Snohomish County to help some of the problems that we're addressing right now, as many of them have been reported with our own police department. So that's my statement. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with Councilmember Ryan. I think, I think the most important thing is to show support for public safety and law enforcement and our citizens that we're stepping up and joining the coalition, working together to solve this problem.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilmember Murray?
Thank you, Mayor. And appreciate, Stefan, the information you got was really helpful. So I appreciate you sending that over and getting us some additional info. I guess I would just be curious for those who, because I've been trying to do some reading about the coalition itself and the work that they're doing and working to understand, not only what the cost involved is, but kind of what the goals are, because public safety, I think, is a good goal that we're all in support of. But what that means, I think, could mean lots of different things, and folks have lots of different perspectives on. So I guess I'd be curious to know specifically about the local versus, it seems like most of the efforts thus far have been legislative lobbying efforts. And that's how I read their website, at least, was that, they're saying we've all done work in our communities with, investing in first responders, embedded social workers, innovative public safety strategies, and we'll continue to pursue those, but we want to pursue these other things. And they identify, I guess, four pieces of work. And maybe it would be unfair to put Chief Kaw on the spot, but they sent a legislative request letter with some very specifics. And I don't know that you've had a chance to see that, Chief Kaw, but I guess some of them are things that I will candidly say that I don't know a lot about. So, they talk about creating court-driven solutions to prescribe treatment and services and outline some very specific things around that. So I guess they seem to have a very specific perspective as a group. And so we would be joining a perspective that has already been created in some ways. So I guess I would just love to understand what it is, I guess, how joining those efforts would potentially be, I guess, impacted, and how, our folks see those. So yeah, I would love thoughts if you have any.
Okay, no problem. I anticipated that question. If you read some of the material and you also read some of the media, the reason they've been dealing so much with the legislature is there's two issues, and I agree with their assessment that these two issues, legislative measures, and one is a court decision, created more problems than they solved. The first one being the Blake decision, which really made it complicated for us to meaningfully enforce drug laws. They made it a misdemeanor. This suggestion has some other ideas that put it back in the realm of actually making custodial arrests in these situations of forcing people into treatment instead of just giving them a pass every time. And then secondly, the legislative changes that made it very difficult for us to do our job last year, most of those have been fixed with the cooperation of the legislature, with the notable exception of the legislating when police can engage in pursuits. And to our mind, that's really a command decision that should come from the police chief, not from the legislature, and it's made things very complicated. I can tell you that our pursuit policy is very conservative, almost as conservative as the legislative fix, but not quite. So those are two of the things that this group has gone after in terms of the legislature. But I think after they've made their opinions known, I think they want to broaden out and really address these problems and not just complain about them, but suggest some fixes. And if you saw some of the material, they have a very well thought out fix, particularly about the Blake decision and how to really attack the terrific problem we have with addiction, specifically fentanyl. Actually, I think their idea is very well thought out from my perspective, and I've told you before that this social experiment with drugs has been an abysmal failure from my perspective. So I agree with their supposition there. So I think they're trying to broaden their focus instead of just a lobbying method and try to work together to solve the problems, or at least to present some alternatives to where we're at now.
Thank you. Incredibly helpful, and I appreciate your expertise and insight. And so I guess, my initial thoughts are I do think that, we have broad issues that go far beyond our borders, and, the idea of partnering with other, leaders in our county, is one that is appealing, to make real progress on things. I think I have some questions at this point, and it's, it's not a small investment. I wish that, we understood better the direction of the commission at this point. But I would be open to the idea of participation, with the idea that we would reevaluate after this initial kind of time period. I think the contract with the consultant goes through the end of the legislative session, and see whether or not it felt like a good investment from our perspective. But appreciate the work that's being done, and I appreciate that folks are looking for solutions and looking to work together to find them.
Anyone else? We even have the chief at the table here. All right. So if there are no other objections, I'll just move forward and sign this letter. Then we can send the membership fee in. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chief. Next is the discussion, the budget presentation follow-up.
For the record, Stephen Clifton, Assistant City Manager. Following up on 3 presentations given last week, November 7th, November 9th, November 10th, we took notes and listened to your comments, and we collectively met as a group to talk about those. And we've incorporated some of the comments you've made into the presentation this evening. But before I go much further, I do want to talk about the budget book itself. We were able to provide the City Council an electronic version of the budget last Friday. And what you have in front of you, or if you brought it with you, we do have a printed version as well, and it does have tabs So it makes it a little easier to find the chapters within the budget book. And if you see any errors, any clarifications that need to be made, because that was brought to my attention, there's a couple grammatical issues and things like that, please let us know. We'd like to get it cleaned up before we adopt, or you adopt, the final version of the budget. So we do want to note that, this is only a proposal coming from the city manager's office. We're definitely open to all suggestions, and obviously the city council is the body that adopts the budget, so we're looking for guidance from the city council. And then after I give my presentation, the interim city manager, Andrew Neiditz, wants to make a few comments, and then we can open it up for questions from the city council. So I just want to give a brief overview again of the schedule. This is for those who are just tuning into the budget process for the first time. But this evening, I'm going to give a brief follow-up presentation related to last week's conversations. And then following my presentation, we will have a review of the general operating levy, and then also review of emergency medical services and review of the property tax ordinance, and that will be presented by Janella Lewis, our finance director. On November 21st, we will have a public hearing, and that will be for the purposes of the city council considering and possibly adopting the information that's presented to you tonight, i.e. the resolutions and the ordinances, and then also the adoption of the 23-24 or 20 through 27 Recreation and Parks Fee Resolution. On Thursday, December 1st, the council will have an opportunity once again to discuss the 23-24 biennial budget process and ordinance. And then on December 5th, we'll have another public hearing on and adoption of the 2023-2024 proposed budget ordinance. And then we have a tentative date set aside for December 6th. And it would be good to hear from the council whether or not you need that date. If you're not able to make a decision on the 5th, whether or not you'll need that date. If you can let us know before the evening of December 5th, we do have to issue a special meeting notice, and it needs to be done 24 hours, at least 24 hours in advance. And then on Monday, December 15th, we have a number of professional services agreements to present to the city council. And then on December 19th, we have a number of professional services agreements as well. And then we have a contingency date in case the council doesn't adopt either on the 6th or the 5th of December for you to adopt the budget on December 19th. And that is the last city council meeting of the year. So 19th is a regular session, and that we have set aside as a contingency date in case the council does not adopt the budget on December 5th or the 6th. It's not, oops, okay. Oops, I'm sorry, let me get the previous. Yeah, it should be, that's not correct. It should be Thursday the 15th and Monday the 19th.
Okay.
Thank you for the clarification. So just going through the proposed changes from the November 7th presentation, we do have a number of proposals for council consideration, contracting with consultant to assist the DEIC with the work plan, events, and meetings. I did provide some further clarification in the right-hand column named fund. I did indicate on there whether or not it's for 2 years or whether or not it is an ongoing program or position. And so the next item under the city council manager is funding for IT strategic plan and structural evaluation consultant. So you'll see the dollar amount, $75,000, in the 2023 column. You won't see it in the 2024 because that's a one-time expenditure. We also have creation of the communications manager position and not funding the existing communications specialist. That's a difference of $39,000 and $40,000 respectively for 23 and 24. That is a general fund ongoing position. And then regarding the police department, we have 2 e-bikes that they would like to purchase. $30,000 initially in 2023, $15,000 in 2024. And I did speak with the police chief recently and asked him about any ongoing expenditures, and he noted those would be negligible unless something happens with the bikes and we need to repair them for some reason. So it's almost a 2-year expenditure unless something goes wrong in 2025 or 6. New community services officer. This is created by combining 2 existing part-time cadet positions into one, and the difference is a little over $13,000 for both years. That is proposed to be funded by ARPA for the years 2023, 2024, and then the general fund ongoing, and that is included in the spreadsheet numbers that you have in your notebook. Human resources, consultant for a salary survey, $40,000 one-time expenditure in year 2023, and that's coming out of the general fund. And then for parks, recreation, this was discussed by Jeff Betts some time ago with the city council. This is a matching amount of money for $123,000 to a child care stabilization grant. And that's a one-time expenditure of 2023. A proposed funding source is ARPA. Next, we have adding a special events coordinator position. That is 84 and 87 for 2023 and 2024, respectively. It would be ARPA for the first 2 years and then general fund ongoing. And the reason that it's proposed, ARPA funding is proposed for the initial 2 years is because the pandemic took a toll on our events and special programs, and this is to help us get back on track. And so there's a good nexus, a connection between ARPA funding and using that for the first 2 years of this position. The next item is dedicated scholarship fund. This is for camps and classes. Again, all these programs in the Parks and Rec department were significantly hit during the pandemic. So we are proposing $10,000 for 2023 and 2024 for the first 2 years using ARPA funding. Then we have an Independence Day celebration, $20,000 for 23-24. A rotary mower and a billy goat leaf collector in the amounts of $35,000 and $30,000 respectively for 2023. That's a one-time expenditure, so you don't see that in the 2024 column. Then we have a camera van with extension ability coming out of Fund 410 and 511. That is not general fund. And so that's $380,000. We have emergency response trailer in the amount of $7,000, a 30-inch asphalt zipper, $180,000. You see the funding broke down there. Fund 111 is essentially the general fund, and 10% of that amount is coming out of the general fund. Public Works shelf stock. I described this last time as the Public Works Department essentially stocking our shelves and purchasing parts and equipment that have been difficult to get because of supply chain issues and delays. And so they want to purchase this equipment and things up front, have it on the shelves, ready to go should anything happen. And so $50,000, $51,000 is set aside for both years. Diagnostic vehicle electronic scanner, it's coming out of Fund 511, and we have $10,000 in year 2024. Then we have a new maintenance worker 1 position coming out of the general fund, $89,000, $96,000 respectively. This is an ongoing expenditure, so that is included in the numbers that are within the budget that you have before you. Then we have a proposal to have a mechanic overlap, and what this is bringing someone on board, having them work with the person who's in the position now, who has notified us that they do intend to retire. And so it's to get this person up to speed and have them work with this person day in and day out so that when this person retires, this person knows everything that's going on in the shops and is able just to kind of continue on seamlessly. So you'll notice a one-time expenditure for $104 in 2023 and only $15,000. That should be a negative. That is a savings. And so that is a a savings of $15,000 in 2024. I might have taken the negative out when I reformatted. So we have a total ARPA funding amount of $336,000 in 2023 and $141,000 approximately in 2024. So that's about $476,000. And this is only our proposed recommendation. The council has obviously the ability to either support or not support those recommendations. And then the next table relates to comments that were made last week during the presentations. We've had a number of conversations, either one-on-one or one-on-two, when I've been meeting with the council, and this has been expressed during council meetings in the past. And so the first line item relates to an economic conditions or market analysis. I've contacted a number of firms that do work on these kinds of proposals. I contacted Eco Northwest, Community Attributes, Leland, and others to try to get an estimate as to how much it would cost to perform this kind of analysis. And some of the functions that would take place in this study would be another review of the town center plan. It's probably very important to do so in light of the pandemic and how it might have affected the market. Obviously, it has, because of the interest rates and the impact that's having on borrowing. Demographics, including growth projections, employment and economic structure locally and regionally, including projections, a broad national and regional trends in demographics and development related to topics, housing affordability, labor market concerns, existing conditions and town-specific demand factors for major land use types, residential, retail, office, industrial, with breakouts by subtype, and that's what I asked for. We really wanted them broken out like we did for the town center, where we had them look at commercial, office, residential. Also, a discussion of conditions and potential for other land uses, including any kind of public amenities, educational, medical, hospital, lodging, discussion of broad trends and local potential for specific to transit-oriented development, as we are a light rail community. And so that's definitely going to have an impact on the city of Mountlake Terrace. And then an analysis and strategic recommendations for the Mountlake Terrace focused on economic and real estate development. And the estimates given to us were anywhere from $50,000 to $75,000, depending on how much we wanted accomplished. We did note that we also want to amend and update the economic vitality element, which was not a part of the scope that we discussed. We want that updated as well. And so we added another $25,000 in there. So we rounded up to $100,000. That should easily get us what we want. And what Christy and I were thinking about is that you want those numbers to be prepared and as up-to-date as possible just prior to the launch of updating the comprehensive plan, which needs to be done in 2024. So we imagine something like this would probably be done in the middle of next year. And it's not like it's going to take them 6 months to do it, but it's all about timing and making sure the numbers are up to date. And we do propose using ARPA funds for that as well. And the reason for that is, and I'm going to separate these, anything that's related to ARPA funding is not going to affect the general fund balance. And so anything that the council decides to do that would not be funded by ARPA obviously could affect the ending fund balance, whether it's 23, 24, or even into 2028. The next item is Economic Alliance Snohomish County. That's what EASC stands for. Mountlake Terrace and Mountlake Terrace Chamber Partnership. I think we've discussed this many times over the years, and I discussed this during my presentation that I contacted the Economic Alliance of Snohomish County, and I said, hey, can you put together a proposal of what it might take to help our chamber and help our business association with a lot of different things that they need to do, whether it's getting themselves off the ground, because recently the Business Association has transitioned to a Chamber of Commerce, and this is just happening, and we understand they're about to file their papers, so they need some help in getting off the ground. And so I got a proposal. It is in front of you, and I'll see if I can find it here. And I know I have it here. There it is. And so I asked them, we talked about doing this in the past, but I want a definitive, I want something very specific that will help our chamber and help the city. So this was proposed and prepared by Economic Alliance. This is something they've also prepared for Mill Creek, according to Wendy at EASC and a couple other cities as well. The intent here is to hire an individual who can help the smaller cities in our region with this effort, because Mill Creek needs this as well, and some other smaller cities need it. So they would have one dedicated part-time staff member, and they'd like to hire that person within the community if possible. They would help with the management of a community coordinating meeting, bringing together all the Mountlake Terrace nonprofits, the service organizations, Edmonds School District, the service clubs, food bank, Boys and Girls Club, faith-based organizations and business leaders, Mountlake Terrace section in EASC newsletter, one in-city EASC sponsored networking event, social media marketing, discounted memberships into EASC, and training for chamber staff. And then on the back page, you'll notice a breakdown and the proposal. And so they would participate in community coordinating committee meetings, 12 per year, once a month, monthly member-to-member meetings, 12 a year, quarterly network events, one per year, and then a coffee with the mayor. Could be the city manager as well, in talking with Wendy at EASC. Also, they would help with event management. They could dedicate some hours for Arts of the Terrace, Tour de Terrace, holiday tree lighting. Obviously, if we get an events programmer and a manager, I could see maybe using a little less hours. And so we talked about this earlier amongst city staff, and I could see some massaging of these hours and putting more hours into working directly with the chamber, one-on-one mentoring, helping them kind of, figure out what it means to be a chamber and how to facilitate meetings and things like that. And then also some website management, social media, event sponsorship. And this would be for an amount of $49,000, and that's because we're sharing these expenses with another city. So I like the way that it brought the price down. You definitely do not need a full-time person to do this. So this might be a way to kind of help out our business association with a number of activities. And that, again, we propose using ARPA funding for a period of 2 years. Obviously, because of what's happened, we noticed that during the pandemic, the business association wasn't really meeting and not conducting a lot of activities. And so this is to kind of help get them back on their feet. Boards and commissions, there were comments made last week about providing some funding for boards and commissions other than or in addition to the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Commission. So we left this amount blank because we want to hear from the council as to how much you might want to contribute to any of those entities. I did talk with Jeff Betts, and he did talk to me about amounts that have been given to these organizations in the past, like the Arts Commission and RPAC and things like that. And he said that $15,000 was given before to the Arts Commission. He said that was so long ago that he said really you could increase that by at least another $5,000. And then with RPAC and some of the other groups, he talked, and I should say all the directors are online tonight, and they are able to answer your questions. We didn't feel they needed to come to the meeting. Andrew, Janella, and myself, and Pete, we thought we could cover it. And I see Phil as well. And so the others are participating online, and so they're ready to answer any questions you might have. So just to remind you as well, just want to let the public know, the council heard this last week, but the budget does include a 1% increase in property taxes as allowed by the Washington State Constitution. And there is a proposed cost of living increase of 3%. for at least the next 2 years. That concludes my presentation, and we are here this evening to answer any questions the council might have. But first, Andrew did want to share his thoughts with you.
Okay.
Thank you,
ahead.
Stefan, and Mayor and members of the council. I know some of you have been through a number of budget processes, and I think some of you have not. And so I simply want to reiterate, if you will, that in the role of a city manager, the presentation of the biennial budget is one of the most critically charged tasks that has to be done timely, and it has to be done in a balanced manner, and it has to be done right for it to be successful. As the interim city manager who's been here simply a few days, I was not involved in the process, but I do want you to know that, having had extensive discussions since I've been here and having been observing what's gone on for many hours since I've been here, I have a lot of confidence in the process that the assistant city manager, who was the acting city manager, went through in a very collaborative manner with the staff and the executive leadership team to produce a budget recommendation. This has been a time of transition for the organization, as you all well know, and so people were picking up the slack and keeping things on schedule as best they could. I recognize that you actually didn't get the budget books until this week, and so you're kind of catching up with that process, but you did get the presentation online a bit earlier. But I wanted you to hear from me how important I think this process is, and the role that you all play. As the assistant city manager has stated, this needs to become your budget. As it's presented, it's the city manager's budget proposal, because that's by law what he has to do. But during the next few weeks, this has to become the council's budget. And so there can be and there should be the give and take. There's no expectation of a rubber stamp process simply because the budget's here and because it's almost December. There is time for discussion this evening. You had a little bit of discussion during the 3 sessions last week. There's another session set, as was mentioned, on December 1st. So there are those opportunities for you to discuss as a group. There's also the opportunity for you individually to express concerns between meetings. You can email or call our office and let us know. And we would actually appreciate getting those communications, because it would help us prepare for a fruitful discussion when you get together as a group. Certainly there needs to be some consensus as to what adjustments would be made to the budget, because you all have to eventually vote on it, and it's a much healthier process when you are unified in your approach to the budget. One thing that very much, in my opinion, complicates this budget is the discussion about ARPA. A few years ago, nobody knew what ARPA was. Maybe they thought it was the name of a whale or something. I mean, it's now become a big factor. And of course, it has a limited time frame, and it has somewhat of a limited purpose. I do recognize that a healthy amount of ARPA, of federal ARPA funding, which is American Rescue Plan Act, for people in the audience who don't know an acronym. Government is so well known for acronyms that we speak to each other always assuming that everybody knows what ARPA stands for. But ARPA was the federal government's reaction to the pandemic, and it's the American Rescue Plan Act. And so cities and counties and states throughout the nation have been dealing with ARPA funding and trying to make meaningful adjustments to the difficulties that were accounted, that took place during the last couple of years. My strong recommendation to the council is that you not go beyond this level of funding for ARPA right now, that you not realize that there's a balance of over $4 million in ARPA, and that you would attempt in the next 2 weeks to try to come up with a spending plan or expenditures to use it all. I say that because I think the timing is too short, and I think there needs to be more thought put into the ARPA process. So I'm recommending that whatever ARPA ideas you have, that we put them on the table, but that you plan sometime after the new year to have a special session, perhaps a half-day retreat or whatever is most comfortable and convenient for all of you, and let ARPA be a carefully thought-through program that's not just a reaction to having some money and feeling the need to spend it. So I would encourage you to view ARPA in a fairly conservative manner, recognizing that you can't just let it sit there indefinitely, but it does not have to be decided in the next 2 weeks. Those are my comments. Just wanted you to know that this is has been a collaborative process at the staff level, and Stephen and I both are looking forward to a collaborative process with the council. We want to support you as you go through your review, and so that would be it. Thank you.
Thank you. So I have, well, first of all, if nobody else brings it up, I'll bring it up. Is there any questions or comments?
Yes, go ahead.
So on the, on page, well, they're not numbered. Proposed changes from 2021-2022 budget, city council manager. The creation of a communications manager exists, and then the existing communications specialist, which is not funded. Which one is that? Is that the one that's going to be, which one is being held right now? And then which one are we funding?
The communication specialist is what's funded now, and the intent is to not fund it, but instead create a new communications manager position. That's something that Scott and Leslie had discussed with the council in the past, I think earlier this year.
So if it becomes, so the person that's in that role right now will take whoever takes the next role, we're not going to have, because from what I understand, that's a really, really, it's going to take a lot of time.
Yeah, they would still perform essentially the same functions, but they would manage a little bit more, and they would actually kind of serve as your public information officer as well. And what we're talking about is having that person work hand in hand with the events coordinator to make sure that collectively all the messaging, all the planning, all the organization is being worked on between those two positions.
All right. And then, so at the very end, on the very last page, on the second to the last page, where we're talking about the boards and commission potential funding, we did used to fund various committees, but which committees will need funding today? Like we still fund the garden club.
The what?
The garden club?
Not that I'm aware of. But
Oops.
We used to,
Where did they get the
we
money?
do have Jeff Betts on the, in Zoom, who could be able to maybe help us with that. Jeff, can you help us answer those questions?
I can. Can you see me okay and hear me?
Yes.
We can. Thank you.
Okay, great. So my laptop is down, so I'm on my work cell phone. There is a line item amount that is applied for the garden club out of the city manager's budget, I believe. But it's not a board and commission. It's just a volunteer group, and they help supply and plant all the different city entry sites near the library.
So I hope they still have enough money to be able to do that, because we did add a couple of monuments and so forth, and they're going to need some help, right? They need volunteer help.
Absolutely.
And then, so the Arts Commission, we did fund them in the past, and then we asked them to get a nonprofit going, correct? The Arts Commission. So they were on a line item funding from the city in the past, way in the past. I wouldn't know.
Can you please speak into the microphone?
There used to be a arts coordinator,
Yes.
and then it went half-time, and that was the funding to put on some events at the pavilion and possibly some concerts in the park. And then that evaporated after a couple of years.
So,
And
excuse me.
so they don't have any line item budget now, of course.
No, because there's a nonprofit that they had to develop. The Friends of the Arts? What's the name of it?
Yeah, Friends of the Arts is a nonprofit organization. It's a separate entity,
Right.
and they do support the arts of the Terrace, although they could support other events, not including that. They could change with their support at any time, as it is a federal and a state nonprofit.
So, and then some of the funding also comes from the hotel motel tax.
That would be a grant and can only be, as far as I know, awarded to a nonprofit, and that would be the Friends of the Arts. And then that could go to anything they wanted. And right now it's going towards the art show. The art show costs approximately $20,000 to put on. The hotel motel tax provides $10,000. If they didn't have that $10,000, there can't really, realistically can't be an art show. But kind of trying to differentiate between the Arts Commission and the Friends of the Arts. So they're two separate entities, but the Friends of the Arts have been supporting the art show.
So I think what I'm trying to get at is, if we fund one commission, we have other commissions. And so I'm just trying to look at it to be equitable with, so what do the other commissions need? What can they do? So the only other one would be RPAC and then the Planning Commission. And I was thinking, what can the Planning Commission spend money on? Well, it might be education, it's conferences, whatever. But it's just something that I'm bringing up. So I like that we have budgeted for DIC, and hopefully we can work out, put maybe a little bit more money in there so that we can cover whatever comes up with the other commissions, especially RPAC, because what can we spend? Garden Club worries me, because if there's only $5,000 in that budget for the flowers that they plant, it's going to, they used to put in beautiful flowers, different types of flowers, and then maybe we're just going to see pansies this year. Which is what I see other places doing. So that's just my, I'm just trying to get everybody here, I'm trying to be more equal to everybody. if we're going to do one, then, what can we do with the others? Maybe one commission or board doesn't need as much money as another one, because DEIC and the arts will be putting on events, and they will need more money for that. So that's just my 2 cents worth on that one. So maybe we can work on trying to figure out what can we do. We have $20,000 here for 2 years for ARPA funds, but beyond that, we want to keep it in the budget, right? So we're going to have to work on that one. But it's, in the whole scheme of things, it's not a large amount of money.
Madam Mayor, may I just make a quick comment in terms of observing the process? If the question is, what is the city's approach to supporting boards and commissions, it seems to me that you are certainly, the city is certainly staffing them, so you have support, whether it's line itemed or whether it has its own fund or not. The city is certainly stepping up and doing that. So there is, at least my impression is that there's some balance with that. I thought that part of the justification for the DEI Commission was because of its newness and the complicated nature of their task, that there was a desire to have a one-time study, if you will, to kick it off and to assist it to define its mission and move forward, as opposed to the ongoing support or staff support. So that doesn't take away from anything you just suggested in terms of the balance of events and those kinds of things. But it is clear to me that the city is providing support for, I think, all the commissions, although it shows up in different ways.
Yes, the DIC is separated between the support person, which was $10,000 a year, and then the $20,000. So we're not going to take away the support person. That's something that they do need, and that's going to hopefully remain in there. Go ahead. Oh, okay. All right. Well, you have your turn. Does anyone have anything to add to any of that? Councilmember McCardle?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess my understanding with the funding for the DEIC was it would be initially, it'd be for 2 years, a $10,000 consultant fee to help them develop their work plan. Mm-hmm. And then we'd fund them $20,000 for the next 2 years to put on events. So, and that's the total of the 30. And so that gets back to, we're going to fund that commission to put on events. Why can't we fund the Arts Commission to do the art show? Or, we're funding the garden club to buy the plants and things for the city planters, but we're not funding an art show. Just a question I have, and, maybe more topic of discussion on that. That it's the funding part of it. So like you said, you want to be equitable, and if we're going to fund the garden club to buy the flowers and all that, we fund DEIC, but we leave the Arts Commission hanging to find their own funding. I kind of look at it like what we're doing with our streets. We find all the grant funding to build our streets and maintain them, and we don't focus on funding it. So just my thoughts.
Well, go ahead, Councilmember Murray.
I just want to ask a quick question to make sure that I'm following. Thank you, Mayor. So I guess my question, does the Arts Committee, I guess, because we have the art show, that's a standing thing that we have put on and have found funding for. Is there a need for fund? I guess this is where it would be helpful if we're going to, I don't know that equitable always means equal. I think we need to be clear on that different groups are going to have different needs. And I do think that there is a need, particularly for the DEIC, because we didn't give them a lot of clarity as we set them forth on a large and, a large mission with a lot of breadth. I think it's important that we invest in helping them to develop a work plan and, some foundational, the work that they need in order to help the commission do work that is really applicable across all of the work that we do as a city. But I guess, have we asked I think that's back to kind of what you were saying, Mayor, like, I think it would be helpful to ask the commissions, like, what resources they need. If there were funding, like, what would they use funding for, and what do they see as needs for their group? I think that would be a really helpful thing to do as we're trying to make these decisions versus trying to guess, so.
And we're not talking a lot of money. It's 5,000, 10,000.
Anyone else?
Go ahead.
Anyone else?
I don't know, you
Yeah.
had your hand up.
Testing 1, 2. I'm going to be talking more about the Arts Commission, but I wanted to go back to the page that has add special event coordinator position. The first line is a child care stabilization grant, and then below that, the second line is add special event coordinator position, assist with communications, planning, coordination, and implementing city and community events. I know there's certain events that they would help with, but has anyone kind of put together a list on that or an idea of what the city events would be?
Jeff, could you help answer that question?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Councilmember. Yeah, I think that this is a piggybacking not only on what we currently do, which includes events that assisting with Tour de Terrace. There's the tree lighting. There's National Night Out, 3rd of July. Those are just some of the big events, but I believe in the council's goal setting and some of the action steps and objectives, things like that within your goals. Those are one of the things that you identified as trying to expand special events, including, potentially concerts in the park, building on the art show, potentially doing some more cultural events. So I think this position could help expand on quite a few different commissions' goals as well. So it wouldn't just cover, I believe, some of the existing, but maybe could help expand some of the council's goals as well.
Could it also help in, with the arts? Not just the art show, but other things with the arts?
I believe so.
Okay. All right, thank you. I want to read you the history of the Arts Advisory Commission as it's on our website. The Arts Commission, it's to promote and sponsor events to enhance the cultural atmosphere of the community. So technically, it isn't just for an art show. It's actually the event commission we have given them. So we're going to have to figure out who's putting on events with, like, if the arts is in charge of events and the DEI commission would like to put on an event, do they have to work with the Arts Advisory Commission because they're in charge of events? Because I don't want people stepping on other people's toes. So who's in charge of events? It says here that it's the Arts Advisory Commission. So that's kind of interesting. We're going to have to kind of delve into that a little bit more because they're in charge of events. Now, when we had National Night Out, that was with the Police Advisory Board. That was their main purpose. So not only commissions have purposes, reasons. So the purpose of the Police Advisory Commission, which I was the liaison for, their main task was to put on that National Night Out. Then that got pulled from them and just was worked internally with the police department. And then, as you know, 1 or 2 years later, the commission went away because really it had not a lot of participation with the purposes they were coming up with. So that's that. July 3rd, I could see this special group, the special new person coming on board for the, July 3rd and things like that. And I don't know if people would then work with them or, so anyway, it could get complicated with the events coordinator, the arts, which is in charge of events, and then other people wanting to have events. So we probably need to have more conversation on that because, I don't know, it'd be kind of like a tug of war.
I think that the goal is probably for everyone to work together. And so we're going to have to, maybe we can have a workshop, to just figure out just the boards and commissions, and see what we can do to help everybody out.
I think you raise a really good point, and the position is the special event coordinator, not manager. And so they are helping with a lot of different organizations, entities, et cetera. So they would work with the Arts Commission, they would work with the DEIC Commission. For instance, if they want to host a special speaker and stuff, the events coordinator could help coordinate that event. And just, we see this person as working with a lot of different entities, city staff, city council, et cetera. So it's not a special event manager as much as a special event coordinator and just helping everyone kind of logistically make things happen.
Okay, do you want some?
More.
More? Okay, you can have more time.
Thank you. That position, the event coordinator, could help in that per our Mountlake Terrace Arts and Cultural Plan. Years ago, it was suggested we have a full-time or a part-time person for that. And that's per the Arts and Cultural Plan. So I don't know if that sounds like it could fit in there. Although it was recommended that it be full-time or part-times for just the arts and cultural arts. So we're going to have to talk about that too.
Well, there wasn't any other committees at that time.
Yeah, that's true. But we did spend a lot of money on this plan. Does anybody remember how much?
What year was that one?
Yeah. I'd have to go look. It's on the website, but that broke down tonight. I couldn't get it up. But it was, I don't know, 5, 7 years ago?
Okay.
And I think we spent, I don't know. Was that? Okay. But anyway, so that's something we'll have to take a look at because what they recommend for arts, it was going to be a arts/events coordinator.
Okay, so if I don't see any other hands going up, or is there, go ahead. Well, Councilmember McCardle and then Woodard.
Just as we're talking and having this discussion, maybe one thought to think about, instead of trying to fund each commission we have, we could, the special events coordinator position, that would be, the cost is the salary of that position, but it also comes with available funding for the special event. So if the arts wanted to put out an art show and the special event coordinator, it would be part of that position in that budget that to house the money that all the commissions would have access to it for their special events. Just a thought. Thank you.
Councilmember Woodard?
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate those comments. Councilmember Ricardo. I just wanted to back up and since we're on this page that's up on the screen, remind us that the Independence Day is July 3rd, and let me go on record, love that event, but we're talking one night. To my recollection, we funded that for the first time this year without it being a part of the budget. I don't remember how we paid for it. And now it's being proposed to go into the general fund at the $20,000, and I presume that's through time. And I just want to kind of remind us that I find it interesting that we are willing to put $20,000 into one day with not much discussion other than what we did in the past. And then we're talking about commissions, which I fully support, funding the commissions, all of them, at basically the same amount, but they would be doing that over the course of a year. So just kind of want to keep that in mind as we're eventually going to get to negotiating numbers, be it 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100,000 at the end of the day. But just to remind us that we are already taking on some new expenses that have not been there before and have not raised any feathers, which I think is interesting, because again, the exact number that we are looking at is going into one day called Independence Day celebration, which again, I am a fan of, but I'm also a fan of the commissions. So just kind of wanted to make sure we keep that in our thoughts as we're thinking about or not funding the commissions.
Okay, so I guess we can now go to Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you all, and great discussion. And I guess I'm not sure if I should start on this topic or get into some of these other notes I've got, but I guess while we're on this topic, I think we need to, I like Councilmember Murray's point that we need to look at the needs and focusing on what the needs are. And I see a need for both arts and updating, and I'd also like to separate events from planning, you know. And I see a need for DEIC. We created this commission, and it's a great group of people, but they need some guidance. They need to help in creating a vision and a plan for what they want to do to help us achieve our vision for diversity and equity and inclusion in our community. And so having a consultant on board to do that is, I think, necessary. And part of their role would be to develop a strategic plan. Separately, I think I think there's a great need to be able to fund events, whether they're arts events, cultural, diversity events, whatever. So there's the need to not only have an events manager, but funding for events. And so getting back to arts, we've referred to this arts and cultural plan we did and then put on a shelf. And we need to bring it off the shelf and update it. And so I think that needs to be part of the plan and funded, just like the DEIC consultant will create a strategic plan for DEIC. We need to get a consultant to update our arts and culture plan. And then that gives us all direction as a community, because, as we do with all plans, we go through a process and we get community input and we figure out, and then we get buy-in, and then our recreation and parks open space plan sort of thing, an RPAC plan, right? We've gone through extensive processes to be able to put together these plans, and then that becomes our vision for parks and recreation. And that's how we fund parks and recreation. We then incorporate that into our budgets. Well, we need to do the same thing with DEIC and with the Arts Council, and be able to put together a vision and then utilize that. Don't just put it on a shelf. Utilize that vision for what we want to become here in Mountlake Terrace. So I'd like to see us do funding for, and it gets back to also equity. I mean, absolutely. I think Andrew made a great point earlier that, look, we put in a lot of staff time. We provide a lot of things for all of the commissions, although we talk about a staff person for DEIC. Well, who is that person right now? Do we have one?
That's who we're hiring.
Right, yeah, so that's my point, is we don't have staff support for that committee right now, right, that commission. And the consultant, but that's a consultant we're bringing on, that's not a staff person to support the committee. So, but that's part of I would imagine what the work plan will tell us. I mean, they'll develop a plan for what we need to do and how we need to go about, what steps we need to take to create this plan for DEIC. So I guess I'd like to see us set aside, and again, I want to take the 30,000 from DEIC and break that apart from the consultant, and then, the events or whatever else is envisioned there, right? And then be able to utilize, and then we need to do the same thing for arts, and have it develop that, take another look at that plan and update it, and then get buy-in and make that part of our vision for the community. And that, by the way, that's part of our city council goals. So to do both of those. So we let's get that funded in the budget. And then as far as events, absolutely, we just need to be doing more events. We need to be doing more arts. We need to do some performing events for performing arts. We need to have concerts in the park. We need to have, movies night or whatever. I don't know. Bands, have live nights with bands in our community. We want to be a lively community. Those are the things we want to be planting the seeds for and helping create. And we need a little bit of seed money to get that all started. So let's put some money into doing that. And then you would talk about, and I like the point, equally is not equity. Equity is not the same. There's a difference here. But then, because if you want to start talking about the amount of money we put into Parks and Recreation, well, there's the whole budget of millions of dollars that goes into Parks and Recreation. Planning Commission, they have the whole department dealing with housing and economic development and all of those things. And we're going to be putting a lot of money into the comp plan update and a whole process, and there's funding in the budget for that process. So there's a lot of money that is in play for all the departments. So that gets back to funding the need that's not in the budget currently, right? So the need, I see a need for both the arts and DEIC for providing that funding to be able to help jumpstart the DEIC and to help renew a plan for arts and cultural events and activities that has been sitting on a shelf that we need to pull off and dust off and make happen again. Okay, so.
Oh, go ahead.
A quick comment. I like your thinking. I totally agree with it. So back to my point, why couldn't we pull out, you talked about separating the 10,000 for the consultant. That's 20,000 extra dollars. And Councilmember Woodard pointed out the 20,000 each year. So the events coordinator position, we fund that, and we initially get it started with, we take those two amounts, is 40 grand, and there's $40,000 sitting there for special events that the commissions can run through the events coordinator and have funding for. Just a thought.
Yeah. And that's why I agree. I think that's a good way to do it, is to have, line out a certain amount for the DEIC consultant and work plan, developing the plan, have a certain amount for the arts, updating the arts and cultural plan, and then have a X amount of dollars that everybody's able to utilize for events and be able to put together an idea for how to put together the plans, and hopefully updating the arts plan and creating a diversity and equity plan will give us ideas for what we want to be, what kind of events we want to be funding going forward. So we just set aside a pot of money to be able to utilize for those things. Are we ready for the next diatribe? Okay, so great. I guess, but where we started on some of this was a question of do we fund the garden club, for instance? Well, that's in the services and charges. So that's one of the things that, and I've asked for in the past, and I'd like to get a list of all the, every department has like 4 different things, and one of them is services and charges or whatever, things like consultants and the garden club and the senior center or whatever is funded out of that. And that's not visible in the budget. So I'd like to make sure that we have that to be able to, so we all know that whether or not we're funding the garden club, for instance. I did want, then I have some questions on in the budget. So we're funding the fire, we have the 6-year forecast for the fire, providing fire services, right? And currently we're contracting with South County Fire, and there's going to be talk about how to move forward with that. I'm assuming that the 6-year forecast is assuming, and the contract with the fire with South County Fire expires in 2 years, right? So this is what we have for the budget, but we're going to be talking about other options. But what we funded in the budget is an assumption that we will continue contracting for now through 6 years, correct? And with
That's
escalators.
correct.
Yeah, okay. And then on the ARPA fund, I like the idea of having $50,000 a year in interest every year. But in the budget, right, we're going to spend it. So, but that's what I guess my question is, in our total in the ARPA fund, we show over 6 years we're making $50,000 worth of interest, but we're not going to. That money is going to be gone in a couple of years. Oh, yeah. So how did that play into the 6-year financial forecast ending fund balance?
That was just you would assume that you would spend it in those 2 years, so I just didn't put it in there. that
Well,
we would have
you mean
spent it.
in the total budget, but in the ARPA fund budget,
Yes.
it is 50,000 for each year for the next 6 years.
Yeah, I would zero that out. We
Okay.
would spend it, but yeah.
All right.
In the presentation, it's shown.
Okay, and
as
so
not.
while it's in that budget, and we're going to zero that out, those numbers did not get incorporated into the overall 6-year bottom line forecast. correct?
No, it's just in the ARPA fund.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, great.
And that has nothing to do with the general fund, so the general fund is, yeah. The transfer gets out of the general fund, so you see that 4.9 million, yeah.
Perfect, good, thank you. And I had a question on the city clerk and public records officers. They were 0.5% of their time, or half of their time was in the city function and half of the time was in community outreach. And I shouldn't say half, it was 0.5 and 0.2.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what is the other 0.3, for each of those two positions? Where did that end up? I couldn't find it when I was looking through.
You should see that.
You can get back to me, don't worry about it, I'm just curious where a third of their time is budgeted somewhere else, I assume. Because I know they're not, of course, you probably feel like you're being paid 2/3 of what
Which one is
you're
it, the
worth.
city clerk?
But,
Yeah, so it's in the community outreach, it's in the city clerk budget, and it's in the city manager budget.
okay, so 0.5% of their time was in the city clerk position, 0.2 was in community outreach, and 0.3 is in
City manager.
city management. Got it.
Yes.
And same thing with public records officer?
Yes.
Okay.
All the positions are.
Divided that way?
Yes, all the positions are broken out by how much they work.
Yeah, in each
For-
area. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so
I just
if you
couldn't
look
find the
on-
other, I just couldn't find the other third. I didn't know where.
Oh, if you look on page 70 and 71, it will show you the breakout between those, yeah.
I didn't think to go back to page 70. I was looking at page 71, I think, and got to 0.7.
Yeah.
I didn't go back to the city management area. Okay, great, thank you. All right, so then just looking at the proposed changes, kind of getting back into that discussion. I understand the nexus, the argument for the nexus between using the ARPA funds for a certain program for some time, but then then it turns over to the general fund. So my first question is, okay, so we're funding it through ARPA in the first 2 years, right? But then our financial forecast, did we then include that in the general fund 6 years later? Okay.
Take the special event coordinator position, for example. out beyond 2024, then it would transition to general fund.
Okay, and so what is the purpose of using ARPA dollars when we know we're going to fund it through the general fund in years to come? Why would we use ARPA dollars instead of our regular budget, general fund budget?
The idea here is to minimize the impact on the general fund, one. The second is that considering the impact that the pandemic had on special events and parks and recreation activities and all kinds of other things, we saw a nexus between using ARPA dollars, at least for the first 2 years, and then hopefully the economy will get better beyond 2024, and it goes back to the general fund, which is where you probably would have normally funded it anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess it just gets back to my concern of utilizing ARPA dollars for ongoing programs. But if we forecasted it, if we included that in the 6-year forecast, that eases my mind a little bit, knowing that at least we aren't going to be caught short in 3 years.
Yeah, so if you look on page 42 of that budget document, that's the financial forecast for the general fund expenditures.
Right.
And so you'll see on there, oh, let me move this over here. You'll see each department, city council, city manager, finance, and then there's a line there that says one-time expenditures, ARPA. And so it's split out there, and it's like the presentation he showed, if he showed you the bottom line here of what that would be, 336,224, and then 141,170. And you can see that going forward from 2026 to 2028, it has nothing in there. That's because it's in each department's budget, and it continues on.
So it's been incorporated into those departments' budgets in the future years?
Yes,
okay.
Exactly.
Great, so the ending fund balance in 6 years is still going to be the same. We aren't going to find ourselves, oh crap, how are we going to fund
Exactly.
$200,000 worth of expenditures? Okay.
Yeah, the goal here was to use ARPA dollars to fund projects and programs immediately following the most difficult part of the pandemic, and then hopefully we'll transition to a more normal budget.
Right.
And utilize that. And we did, like I mentioned on November 7th, the intent here was not to get too far out in front of the city council and instead only propose ARPA funds for about $470,000. So far, you've issued a check for $500,000, leaving you an amount of about $5.4 million, and then another 400 and some thousand would bring you down to about 4.9. So that still leaves 4.9 of money that can be used for discretionary purposes.
Very good. Yes, thank you. And then just getting on so all the proposed changes I agree with the exception of the discussion we just had on DEIC and arts, and make sure that we have funding for both those areas. And then I absolutely, obviously, support the economic development. No surprise there, right? The economic development plan there. In looking at the work plan, I did want to call out, where did I, in my paperwork here, the work plan, here. I did want to, I guess some of the hours look a little, when we agree to that, I hope we aren't agreeing to these specific hours, because I'd like to see us spending, I think it's overall a great idea and something we absolutely need. I'd like to see part of those hours go into small business consulting and technical support, and creating incubator programs. And then more hours on business recruitment and expansion.
We agreed, having looked at that, and Christy and I spoke, we would agree that we'd like to kind of work on the numbers, probably spend a little less on the events part of it, which is in the central part of the back page, and use those for something like you're talking about now, reaching out and really consulting with the business on more technical aspects.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's I saw those numbers of hours on events and thought, no, let's get them focusing on business and business support and put other money into events and events manager and arts and cultural and diversity plan events. Anyway, okay, so that all looks great. And then my final thought is, and I know there's funding in the budget for the comp plan update already, but part of what we need to be doing is that, just like we need to update our economic analysis, we need to do a housing plan. We need to update our housing plan, and we need to get, and I don't know if you want to call it housing action plan or if you want to, but there are a number of things we've talked about over the years that we need to address in housing to, with the missing middle and bottom line is we've got to come up with 1,500 more units, of which many of them need to be more affordable. And how to do that, we're going to need to spend some time, and we need to incorporate that into the budget. That said, there are grants also available out there to be able to help cover that. And so hopefully, just like the 3rd of July event that I know we're budgeting, but we're still going to be hopefully raising some money for and get sponsorships to be able to help fund that. Same thing with this.
So that's where that special events coordinator person can get the sponsorships for that.
Things like July 3rd, yeah. But then Christie's the burden's going to fall on Christie for getting that $200,000 from Commerce, writing those grants.
That's right. Go ahead, Councilmember Murray.
Thank you, Mayor. I think Mayor Pro Tem Wall brings up a good point that I think we've had some conversation around and would love to maybe circle back to around grant support. So we know that, city staff has done an amazing job in finding grants that are applicable and pursuing them and receiving them and then having to go through the process of ensuring that we're taking all of the steps that we need to follow through on those grants. I guess, did you have internal conversations, and I apologize if this was something that came up last week, but did we have conversations around a grant manager perhaps to offload some of that from staff and kind of have a dedicated resource around that to potentially expand our work there?
We have, but to hire someone full-time for a city this size, you can contract with contractors for that purpose. And so that might be a better use for dollars because when you hire someone, you're going to be paying benefits as well on top of it. So a consultant is more money per hour. So, we can reach out and see if we can bring back a number for you and reach out to firms that do that.
I would just be curious if ultimately that investment wouldn't pay dividends in a way that it would make sense, particularly if we're thinking about one-time funds, like perhaps a limited term role with ARPA funds that with the goal that they would be able to pay for themselves after a couple of years of time here. So just a thought and maybe something that would help offload some of the work off other staff, which might also be a really helpful way to lighten the load in some places.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've worked in the past with consultants who actually get a percentage of the administrative fee for successfully getting a grant for an organization.
Thanks.
Councilmember Woodard.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to second that. That did come up last week. I had pitched that as a possible solution when we have the Arts Commission having to write all these grants. And as Councilmember Ryan pointed out, that's all their personal time. We didn't push on it to say, bring us numbers, but just want to be clear. I think that's a great idea. Not just because I said it last week.
Anyone else? Did you have more?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor. I think that, assuming that Stefan was able to catch all of that and you guys are able to, so if you had any questions on that, then let me know, but otherwise I think I'm good. Thank you.
So are we on to the next number 5? Are we done with number 4? Okay, so now we can go on to the review of the 2023 revenue sources, including property.
Okay, good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and Council. I'm the Finance Director, Janella News, and tonight I will be presenting to you the options for setting the property tax levy for 2023. %62% of the general fund revenue comes from taxes, 13% from charges for services, and 25% from interest, state shared, and miscellaneous. These are the operating revenues for the general fund, is $25 million. And it shows you the breakout here, and you can see in green is the property tax. This is the percent of the general fund expenditures. They're $28 million, and you can see 41% is public safety, which is police, fire, and court. 13% is the internal services, which is finance, HR, IT, and property management. 8% is community and economic development and engineering. 7% is parks and recreation. 5% is transfers out, which is to the street and the debt service fund. 7% is legislative, executive, and community relations, and 19% is ARPA, the ARPA transfer that's going out. Operating expenditures as presented in this chart do not include reimbursement for the interfund transfers. The 2022 property tax allocation, the total dollars per $1,000 value. This chart shows the current 22 total property tax rate for Mountlake Terrace residents. There are 7 different taxing districts that collect property taxes for Mountlake Terrace residents. The state and Edmonds schools receive about 68% of the property tax collected, and 18% of the property tax goes to the city. Snohomish County, Swedish Hospital, Transit, and Snow Isle Library also levy and collect property taxes from Mountlake Terrace residents, which totals 14%. So you can see the percentage breakout here and the dollar value. The breakdown of the non-voted versus the voter-approved 2022 property tax. It breaks down the different taxing districts non-voted that's collected in the Mountlake Terrace. 48.86% of the property tax collected are from voter-approved levies. Mountlake Terrace non-voted is the general operating property tax, and Mountlake voted is 0.31 EMS and 0.17 GO bonds for the civic campus. According to the Snohomish County Assessor's Office, the city's total assessed value for taxes in 2022 is estimated to be $5,333,886, which represents a 28.35% increase from the city's total assessed value in 2021. It's a huge spike. Let's see, did I skip? No, okay. Option 1 is the 2022 base amount plus the new construction. So you can see that without the 1% increase, the new construction and the refunds, this is an estimate, you'll get the total tax amount. Oops. This would bring in $4,793,813 in property tax revenue in 2023 and would increase the annual total tax per average home by $20 a year in 2022. Option 2 includes a 1% increase plus new construction and refunds. This would bring in $4,840,000 in property tax revenue in 2023 and would increase the annual total tax per average home by $26. This table shows the 2 different options you have for setting the EMS property tax levy. The calculation of the EMS property tax levy is included on this slide. You first start out with the 2022 base levy amount, which is $1,284,471. To this amount, you add the estimated new construction and refunds, which totals $47,720. This would total $1,332,191 as shown under option 1. This equates to a $6 annual increase for a home averaging $616,743 in 2023. Option number 2 includes a 1% increase plus new construction and refunds, which would bring the EMS levy rate to 25.22 cents per thousand of assessed value. This equates to a $7 annual increase for a home averaging $616,743 in 2023. When added to the $26 increase in option number 2 for the general levy tax, the total property taxes paid by the average homeowner would increase by $33 in 2023 from the amount paid in 2022. This table shows the assumptions used to calculate the net effect of increasing the property tax levy by 1% for the general operating and EMS levy. The assessed value of the average home is estimated to increase by 28.3%, using the estimated assessed value provided by the Snohomish County Assessor's Office for the city's total assessed value. As you can see, the operating levy rate decreased by $400,000 in 2019 and $429,000 in 2022, which is now held in bank capacity. The state of Washington has a budget-based property tax system, not a tax rate system. So when assessed values increase, the rate decreases, and when the assessed values decrease, the rate increases. Property tax rates in Washington use a complex math exercise to determine the rates. The amounts of the levies are set by the taxing districts. They do not set the rates. The county assessor's office sets the rates based upon the amounts levied by the tax districts. This table shows that with option number 2, the average taxpayer will see a $33 total tax increase from 2022 to 2023. So you can see the history from 2019 to 2023. The 2022 typical total property tax paid per average residence for Snohomish County cities. So you can see we have Woodway, Mill Creek, Edmonds, Briar, Mukilteo, Snohomish, and then in green is Mountlake Terrace. Then there's Everett, Stanwood, Monroe, Marysville, and Arlington. This graph shows the total current 2022 levy rate paid per residence in our surrounding cities. Mountlake Terrace's rate of $8.68 per 1,000 of assessed value is 60 cents above and $2.10 below the lowest and highest levy rate, respectively. So you can see Snohomish, Everett, Mill Creek, the same districts, same cities that were on the previous slide. This slide shows different comparable cities' current 2022 levy rates, which includes only the city's general operating and EMS levies. Mountlake Terrace's $1.42 rate is again on the lower side of the scale. So the asterisks that are for Stanwood, Lake Stevens, Monroe, Linwood, Snohomish, Marysville, those are for separate fire districts that they have under them. This graph shows the 2022 average resident value of our surrounding cities. I don't know if you guys can see that. Anybody can see that. Okay, you have the paper in front of you. The average residence value in Mountlake Terrace used for 2022 property taxes was $480,500, and it is estimated to increase to $616,743 for 2023 property taxes, or a 28.35% increase. So you can see in the green is $480,500, and this is for 2022. Woodway, $1.7 million. Arlington, $392,700, and we're right smack in the middle. The recommendation is to adopt a property tax ordinance that includes a 1% increase in the general levy and a 1% increase in the EMS levy, which is consistent with what is included in the proposed budget and the 6-year financial forecast. Included in your packet are draft resolutions for the EMS and general property tax levies that includes the 1% increase for the regular levy and a 1% increase on the EMS levy, and also a draft property tax ordinance that will levy the city's property taxes for collection in 2023 to include levying the excess levy for repayment of the UTGO bonds. And that's for the Civic Center. At the November 17th council meeting, there will be a public hearing on other sources of revenues, including property tax. This is the end of my presentation. Please let me know if you have any questions about the property tax levy for 2023. There's also a memo included that has all of the charts and.
Are there any questions? We'll give everyone else a chance before we go to Mayor Pro Tem. I guess not. So you're going to pass?
Say something.
Oh, no. Do we have to make a decision? Okay. If there are no questions, we're going to move on. Next will be the review, ordinance adopting amended purchasing policy. Oh, is that, did we do all of these? Yes, we did. A, B, and C. Okay. And so now we're on the ordinance adopting amended purchasing policy.
Okay. Let me bring that up. Okay. So there are notable revisions to the city, good evening, Janella Lewis, Finance Director. Notable revisions to the city of Mountlake Terrace's purchasing policies. In 2010, the purchasing policies were revised based on our status of a code city under 20,000 population, and our policies were established based on RCW 35.23. In April of 2012, our population based on the Office of Financial Management report increased to over 20,000, allowing us to use RCW 35.22, which led to an updated ordinance on September 17th, 2012. With the passage of time, inflation rates, it's been about 10 years, the current prices we have decided to update our policy to increase dollar thresholds to federal standards. And we also included an ethics and federal requirements section that is pretty much required by federal granting agencies. These are the bullets here are the different sections that were added. So small purchase procedures were increased from 39,000 to 74 per RCW 35.22620 through RCW 35A 40.210. Purchases exceeding 75,000 was increased from 40,000 for competitive bidding procedures. Public works or improvements of estimated cost less than 40,000 is increased to 75,000 for single craft. Public works or improvements of estimated cost greater than 40,000 for single craft and 65,000 for multiple crafts was increased to 75 and 150,000 respectively per RCW. Public Works small works roster from 300,000 to 350,000. We added a purchasing code of ethics, controlling laws and monitoring compliance section to comply with federal regulations. We also added a federal contracting and procurement section because there's no policy for these in the past, and one is needed due to the fact that we now have federal and state grants for projects, and it's their requirement. I added more detail to the petty cash section because there wasn't any. It just referenced a petty cash, but nothing else. Added updated language to the capital assets section as the rules have changed since 2012. And we updated attachment A table based on the changes referenced earlier. I do have in here a clean version. So this supersedes September 17th, 2012 version. It's effective, will be effective November 21st, 2022 if this is adopted. And let me know if you want me to increase the size. So this is the clean version. I will show you the redlined version next, but this document is about 48 pages. So here is the redlined version. So you can see in September 17th, they changed it from December to 2011. And then this is the changed document. So you can see the small purchase procedures less than, it used to say 39,000, now it says 74,999. Purchases exceeding 75, it used to say 40,000. Public works or improvements, you can see that changed. We also changed the threshold from, I think it was 5,000 to 10,000 for purchase orders. Let's see. We added some sections to the glossary of terms. We added the department director definition and the finance director definition. That's on page 5. There's petty cash. I added that portion. And then the purchase order section, we took out the section about anything over $1,000. That's like really low considering our current times. And then the $10,000 from $5,000. This is the section where the purchasing code of ethics was added. So you can see the controlling laws, the monitoring and compliance. Then small purchase procedures less than 39,999, we changed to 75,000. Updated the solicitation. Purchase of less than 10,000, we changed that from, I think it was 2,500 or less. We took out this section because it no longer applied based on the thresholds that were increased. Then the purchases between 10,000, we changed it from 5 to 10. Of course, we had to change the 5.3.6 and all that because we added a whole new section. Let's see, on page 17 of 43, we changed that from $2,499 to $10,000 for urgent purchase orders in case of an emergency, natural disaster. Let's see. And then on page 21, we changed the public works or improvements of estimated cost less than 40 to 75, and then 65 to 150. And this is based off of new RCWs that have come out. They've updated their amounts. We updated the RCWs that were referenced here in the bullets on page 22. Let's see, performance bonds, we increased that from 35 to 150. We added a section to the retainage of a suspense fund. Change orders, I think we just fix that the way it was formatted. On page 24, that's where it starts with a federal contracting and procurement. So that's a whole new section. Talks about the Single Audit Act, closing, cost sharing or matching, cost price analysis, federal award certifications, additional federal requirements. This was all at the request of the state auditor's office. That's what brought this whole purchasing policy about. Let's see. On page 28, we got rid of the field purchase orders book section. We're pretty much paperless now. We use Munis as our software system. You'll see sections in here too where Munis was deleted because our software program could change, and depending. Let's see. Purchase order is printed. I said maintained. Changed administrative services to finance department. Petty cash, page 30, is where I added more information on our petty cash policy. This is pretty much what we do right now. Each department has petty cash, not each department, but some of them do. Budget amendments section, that didn't change. And then the capitalization threshold for infrastructure assets. There's a section that was added there based on changes. On page 36, I also added another section for tangible and intangible assets because we capitalize software now. I think back in 2012, they may not have. It's no longer called a fixed asset. They're called capital assets, so I changed that. Let's see. And you can see where I changed administrative services to finance. And then attachment A on page 39, you can see what has been deleted based on the new thresholds and what has been increased on line 1. And where I took out Munis. Because like I said, it could change. Attachment C, that the amounts there have changed also. Attachment D. And then we changed, except for contracts over, it used to be 400, now we put 600,000. And that is the end of the redlining. And then you have the clean version. Of the document. And then the ordinance to adopt this new purchasing policy. Any questions?
Do we have any questions? Any comments? Okay. Oh, Councilmember Woodard?
Yeah, just want to acknowledge, thank you for that work. I'm sure that was long, tedious, and full of joy. But very necessary, right, to bring us into the new era here. So thank you for that work.
Yes, it was with the help of the attorney's office. It was, yeah. Thank you.
So a lot of those changes were made because of our audit?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And we added a whole section on ethics in purchasing. So it's something new to me. All right, anyone else? Okay, I don't see any other questions or comments going up, so did a good job.
So council, this would be on consent agenda, if you're okay with that for Monday night?
Right there.
No, can we do that presentation again?
Was that riveting?
All right, so has everyone reviewed the agenda for November 21st? And I'm glad we have it printed. Go ahead, Councilmember McCardle.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question or clarification under the consent calendar, item E, the adoption of the ordinance granting new singular wireless, and it says second reading. Is that, I mean, do we have to actually read it, or what does that mean?
No, it has to be placed on the city council agenda twice by state law. It's a franchise. So I asked the city attorney, if it's placed on consent, can that be considered a second reading? The answer was yes, since I already gave a presentation on that earlier.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
I don't see any follow-up on Monday's agenda as far as the budget. What's the plan for, basically incorporating what we discussed tonight and getting that back to council for review?
We had scheduled a second discussion on December 1st. That's on a work session to review the changes and to see if there are any additional comments. And as I mentioned, while tonight's discussion was very helpful, if there are additional comments, it would really be appreciated if we could hear, if my office could hear from you in between. But yeah, with the Thanksgiving holiday, it's...
Yeah, I won't be here for the first, so we can figure out how I can get a chance to review that. That'd be helpful.
Yeah, I guess the question is, would we be, at that point, we wouldn't be finalized. Will you be here for the meeting on the 5th, which is
Right.
Okay, so
I'll be here in time to adopt it.
right. So yeah, if we can get something to you prior to that, if you let us know what's a convenient date to do that, we can do that.
Monday?
Not sure if we're ready. Yeah, I think we need a little more time than that. What's the following? It's a week from Monday is the 28th. What's the, yeah, we can coordinate that for sure.
I leave on Tuesday.
So you wanting it on the 21st?
Is that going to be more discussion on the budget, or what the numbers will be after tonight's discussion?
Well, just to recap, without having the numbers in front of me, the intent of the discussions is to make sure that this becomes your budget. And so, as I said tonight, was helpful. And so, it's clear to me that there's a consensus among about the things that we talked about. And so there's no question that we'll make those changes. What's I think really important is, are there other things, because this is a lengthy budget with a lot to it. And so I wanted to make sure that we're not saying that it's final yet. This was just the first of several iterations to get to that final point over the next couple of weeks. But in terms of Mayor Pro Tem's schedule, we can certainly make sure that he sees the progress as it's being made. But please rest assured that the discussion items we did tonight will be followed up on as this iteration towards the final.
Will you be able to get emails, attachments? It was something we can discuss later. All right, so next on our agenda is the council comments. Does anyone have any council comments? Councilmember McCardle?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want everybody to know I will not be at Monday's meeting. We have parent-teacher conferences that night, and our last appointment is at 7 o'clock, so I won't be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Woodard?
Two topics. I'll go in order of importance to me. One, I noticed we didn't have public comments tonight. Wasn't sure if we wanted to address that.
Oh, I didn't even notice.
So that's number one. And then number two, last week we did not take action on Councilmember Sonmore's absence. I don't know if she since has offered, and we can now acknowledge that. Housekeeping, if you will.
What are the rules for that? To go back to the last meeting to handle Councilmember Sonmore's.
Yeah, I don't see any amending the minutes to include excusing a member's absence is no problem. I think the intent is to make sure that there's some acknowledgement that there are not unexcused absences for people who disappear for lengthy periods of time. But in this case, because there's an illness involved, there's no problem amending the minutes to cover that. And so if the minutes don't reflect that, then we can make that adjustment.
To the minutes?
Yeah. Do you need an official motion, I guess is the question.
It would be helpful.
That's what I
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move to excuse Councilmember Sonmore from the Thursday night work session.
Second.
Wednesday night. Yeah.
The whole
last
night.
Thursday night.
So it's just the one, okay.
Second.
Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Yeah, just a question for my benefit of clarification. Are we only talking about the one absence?
Just one.
Okay.
We excused her from the Wednesday night work session, but we didn't hear from her about Thursday night, so we didn't make it.
Okay, got it.
Just covering our bases on that.
Thank you.
So going back to public comments, can we add that right now, or is it too late to add public comments?
It's actually on the agenda, so it's just a matter of circling back.
I don't see it on the agenda.
I don't see it.
As the new kid on the block here, is public comment something you do at study sessions all the time?
Yes, uh-huh.
Okay.
Okay. No, it's so many minutes for work session and so many minutes for regular session. in case there's anyone out there, we don't want to. Is there anyone in the, in our audience here? So if not, we gave everyone a chance. All right, anyone else for council comments? If not, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you.